We're talking lists. That's what we're doing tonight. Comic
Yes.
book lists.
Also,
So
also
Wilson
there's a.
hasn't updated his since what, 1997?
I have not updated my list since I think 1997. I remember
Wow.
putting it together around 89 is when I started putting together a list. It started with index cards. So I had like
Ah,
one of those little recipe boxes, like a
mine was a
plastic
loose
box,
leaf binder.
and then I would put it onto like index cards. So like the title and all the issues that I had. No other notes, no who did what or whatever. It was just the issues and what I was missing. And then that graduated onto to the very first Word programs. I don't even think it was
Ah,
Word, but there were early programs for it. And then sometime in 90, I want to say 93 is when some early comic book collector programs came out
right.
where you would put in the information.
Hmm.
And at one point, I put in together my whole list of comics so I could give it to the comic book shop guy to see if he wanted to buy any books. This is when I'm
Ah,
just starting in college. I figured I could sell some of the books, especially the doubles. Maybe I'd make some money. Give it to the comic book shop owner. He says he'll look through it. Then he said, come back a couple of weeks later. So I come back a couple of weeks later. He has sold the shop. So the new guy had no idea what I was talking about. And the new guy was like, I just bought a comic book shop. There's no way I'm going to be buying comics.
Good
The
evening, mind the comic.
hello. The old comic book shop guy had to
Uh-huh.
sell the shop because he went to go work for Marvel Comics. That was Gary Guzzo,
Ah,
who would
okay.
eventually be the guy that brings me into comics a few years later. And then
So
I try to keep up with every few years. I got the new program of whatever it was, and I never kept up on it because they kept changing
I
it.
I haven't updated my list in a few months. I used to. What it was, when did I get my new computer? I got my new Mac Mini like September 2021, I think it was. And before then, I used a program called FileMaker Pro. Um, and my copy of FileMaker Pro is like from 2004. So, and I learned how to use FileMaker Pro just to make my own database, which I did like back in 2004 or something. And I used it up into, and I would actually, it was real easy to use. I would actually come home from the comic shop, make my video, enter my comics in FileMaker Pro, and put them in my Tubi. It would take like, 5 minutes to enter everything in FileMaker Pro. Cut to, September 2021. Um, FileMaker Pro, my, 15-year-old copy no longer works on the new Mac chips. So I had to have some other way to do it. So I figured that there's absolutely no way I'm going to re-enter all my comics in a database program. No, not going to have, because, I'm not going to enter 14,000 comics again in a new program. Nah, nope, 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 nope. So I found a way to export from FileMaker Pro into Numbers, which is Mac's Excel spreadsheet program. So Numbers is the Mac native spreadsheet program. I was like, okay, got everything in there. And that's what I've been using ever since, except it's not quite as nice and elegant as FileMaker Pro. It's a spreadsheet program. It's pretty boring and a little more cumbersome to use. So I don't enter my stuff I was for a little while, then I'm like, eh. So it's like some night some night while I'm sitting there watching TV, it's actually easy for me to enter them in terms of, because I write, even before I was doing my weekly haul videos, I was posting on my blog comics I bought this week, which I still do. I just link to the video too. So I just go back through that. It's in a writing program called Scrivener. So I can just like go back through the weeks of that and enter them into my database. So it's easy to do eventually, but I haven't done it in a few months. But see, I need that in order to find stuff, because the most important thing in my little database program is the location of the comic book. Is it in the studio? Is it in my bedroom? Is it in the closet, in a box? Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to find anything, and I'd have an accumulation, not a collection.
Exactly. Yeah, every
What
I
about
once
have
in
you,
a while.
several. I have
Paolo? Do
several
you have any
comics.
sort of, what was
I
that?
have several comics lists, but none of them are about what I own.
That's right. And I have no list of the collected editions and graphic novels I have.
Mhm.
I made one. There used to be this program called Books, which would scan the UPCs and put it in a list. Cool. I can do that as I get things. But this is the reason I am against using programs in general for things. Um, have your have your list or something as some proprietary program, is they come and go.
Yeah.
Like that Books program, I've used it for a few years, then it's gone. They stopped making it. They stopped supporting it. It was like, well, this is useless now. Now I don't have a list. I have a list in a program I can't access, which is why like people use those I can't remember the names of those apps people use for their comics, like on their phones or whatever. I'm always like, no, I'm not spending all the time entering my comic collection in this app only for them to hold it hostage for $8 a month or whatever it is. Or they could just stop me supporting the app.
Yeah.
And eventually my all that time uh entering my collection is gone. So it's like that's why I like, if if I'm gonna make a list, I'm gonna use a database program like Numbers or
Yeah.
FileMaker. The problem with FileMaker Pro is it became more and more specialized and more expensive and went to a subscription model. So if I wanted to keep my list in FileMaker Pro, I have to pay like $40 a month. I was like, no thanks. And the only thing I use it for is my comic book list.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I've used some apps. I've given them a try, and when I looked at them, what I would do is I would want the list only so I can access it to know what books I'm missing. So when I'm
Right.
ever at a con, I can go, oh, these are the Spider-Man books I want to look for.
CLZ, is that the app?
That's one of them.
Yeah.
And there was one that I used that I liked the interface. I liked how it was, but you could only you could only post 50 books up for free. And that's it. And then the rest you
Yeah.
have to pay. And it's like, I'm not paying a monthly fee to
Right.
access something that I may access on the road at some point in time in the
Right.
future. It's not worth paying a monthly fee for a maybe
Right.
kind of a thing. Where it's like, okay, so now what I do is I'll figure out what's the next book that I want to search for. I write down the book number, then I put it like on a sticky, and it's like, okay, anytime I'm on different sites, I'll look for that particular book. So the hunt is for that book, and it's the only way really to navigate your searches. Because other than that, I don't see paying for the program. I guess it can be useful if you have a large collection that you're always buying and selling and stuff like that, so
Right.
you can keep track. I guess it would make sense with that because some of those apps are connected to other databases to let you know where the market is with this book and
Mm-hmm.
that book, where the price might be in CGC and all that stuff. Great information, and they
Yeah.
even sometimes show you the cover of the book so you get an idea of what you're looking for. But at the same time, it's like I don't need it for
If you're
that.
actively going to cons and comic shops and looking for books you need, and I think it's useful then. But
I think it's useful
if you're
then,
not,
but But yeah, for me, it's
If
not
you want to
all
know
that
the
useful.
location of the book in your collection somewhere, it's not so
Right.
useful.
Mhm.
Good evening, 62 Lefty Blues.
Hello.
Good evening. One thing I got this week is a new version of a new printing of The Great Gatsby. $5 used on eBay, and I got it just because I like this cover.
It's a good cover.
Yeah. And this is the second one I bought used on eBay. And one of the things I like doing that is because this is a book that's an assignment in a lot of high schools. So like the first one I got was some high school girl's copy of it with her highlights and notes in it. And I just love that. I just love that. In this one, it's got some highlights and only a couple of notes, not nearly as many as the other one. But I was flipping through and I was like, what's this folded piece of paper? Is it some sort of bookmark? Whoever's book this was wrote up a timeline of the Gatsby book.
Oh, nice.
So this is a little timeline that says 1917 October, Gage Gatsby and Daisy. 1917 winter, Daisy prevented from seeing Gatsby. 1918 autumn, Tom. June 1919, Daisy wedding and receives letter from Gatsby / drunk. And then no year and honeymoon accident, made from hotel, cheating. I'm like, oh, it's cool. I got a timeline. And I just find that, amusing.
Yeah. Person wanted to make a timeline of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. that shows you what's important to different people,
Right.
when they're reading, what they take from it, because it's not what it's never what the writer wants the reader to perceive.
Yeah, you
And-
never know.
and then when you compare notes with somebody else, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah. And like I said, it's fun. Like it's signed, and most books don't have notes in them, but the Gatsby's gonna, because high school students have to read it and they write notes in it.
Yeah. Then the other one have something like, OMG, this is like so boring.
And they're from different, like, when is this book from? This is the 2022 edition, so it's new.
Ooh.
Wait,
it was already for sale?
Yeah, it was already for sale, used. Well, probably somebody who had it last semester. The other one is like from 20 years ago. The edition of who the girl has her name written. She's got her name written along the edge.
Uh-huh.
So that's fun. Signature Classics. Was it cover design by David Delita and somebody's cover image, dance school illustration from La Vie Parisienne, 1927. Prismatic Pictures. Shutterstock.com.
Shutterstock was not.
So I'm guessing they.
Oh, is the cover image Shutterstock?
Yeah,
it might be a graphic. Yeah, it might be.
Might be, because the book is in the public domain in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So they just got an image from Shutterstock and put out the book. This is a Sterling Publishing. Who? Sterling Publishing. Do you know what building they work out of, Wilson?
Sterling, I think it's is it the where DC used to be?
Nope. 387 Park
Really?
Avenue South. Yeah.
Okay.
They're on, like, and I think they're still there. I do believe. To last I saw, it's their address isn't in this book, but that was the building Marvel was in all through the early 80s into the year like 2000, 2001, where they moved. So Sterling, I actually worked for Sterling Publishing a little bit. They were downstairs of Marvel. Sterling Publishing, New York. So I was like, I'd be going to the same building.
Can you let me see the image again? Can you let me see the cover art again? Because I'm trying to see if I can locate the specific. Okay, so that's right.
It's by. Hold on.
I'm on Shutterstock right now, so I'm trying to find it.
Cover designed by David TER-AVAN ESYAN and Igor Satan Satan OVSKY.
Igor Satanovsky.
Yeah, Satanowski. Satanowski is his name. Wow. And it's a dance school illustration from La Vie Parisienne, which is the life of a Parisian. Is that what that is? 1927, Prismatic Pictures, Bridgman Images. Nick Vector, /Shutterstock.com. NIKVECTOR. I don't know what that is. Nick Vector. Maybe he put it up there.
Yeah. There's a possibility that might be a composite of several different pictures put together, made by the same artist.
Ah, okay. And then Nick Vector put them together, possibly. Who knows? From some old illustration. But I liked the cover, so for $5, I figured I'd grab myself a copy. Manufactured in Canada.
I can't find that image specific. There are a few things here that kind of look like it. But they appear to be different and made by the same artist, but different.
Look up Nick Vector, NIKVECTOR. All one word he's got it as. So
Nick Vector.
Nick Vector. I'm guessing that's a nom de plume.
Okay.
Like vector art?
Yeah. I'm guessing it might be a guy who takes public domain images and turns them into vector art.
All right, so here it is. He does have a page on Shutterstock with all of his 11,603 photos, vectors, and illustrations.
Wow. He's one of these guys. That's how he made his living. He publishes something like that.
Okay,
After
so if I
20-something years, I've yet to spend a single cent for any kind of internet content or service. I'm digitally frugal.
Okay, so there are 79 pictures here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so the image specifically isn't here, but that.
Or it's among the 14,000 images.
No, but I searched for dancing, and they're clearly dancing. That's not here. Could be that that the editor was trying to find an image of people dancing in the 1920s, saw the guy's art, and commissioned something specifically for the Gatsby book.
Who knows? But yeah, nice cover. Does he actually? I wonder if he actually makes his own art, or is just publishing stuff on Shutterstock that he swipes from other way. That Paulo is digging in. Look at him.
Trying to find Gatsby in La Vie Parisienne.
La Vie Parisienne. A lot of letters in that Parisienne too. Paris, IENNE.
I found the art on fineartamerica.com. 1920s France La Vie Parisienne magazine. That's posted by the Advertising Archives. So this, yeah, okay. Okay, let's find out more about La Vie Parisienne magazine.
Oh, yes.
La Vie Parisienne magazine was a French weekly magazine founded in Paris in 1863 and was published without interruption until 1970.
Wow. And they took one of the covers and made it into a Great Gatsby cover.
Yeah, but it's appropriate.
Public domain.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because if you could have something that was published in 1920 in France, but if the author was still alive in 1980, it only goes into a public domain in 2050.
Okay.
Because it's artist, because it's life of creator plus 70 years, not date of publication plus 70 years.
Right, because I forgot that's the
so
overseas
yeah,
European publishing. Okay.
Because that in America, if you create something that becomes famous, it's in your artistic representative's interest that you die as quickly as possible, because now they have control over your material for the next 95 years.
Right.
And in Europe, whoever controls the publishing, your agent, has as much interest as possible as keeping you alive, so that they can control it for more than 70 years. Because you die, okay, I now control this for 70 years. You still alive? Okay, I now control this for 120.
Right.
But you still have to pay royalties to the guy.
Speaking of control, here's an interesting thing I got this week that I won. Well, I'll talk about the copyright in a second. But a book I forgot existed from the black and white boom of the 80s that I always kind of meant to read but never did. Forgot existed over the years. Saw some people talking about it on Twitter, I think it was. And it's Warlock 5, which was an Aircell book. Do you remember them, Wilson, Aircell? Barry Blair did a lot of work for him. I think he may have been one of the owners too, or something.
I remember Barry Blair being the owner. There was a Dale Keown interview in Marvel Age that was once translated for the Brazilian Hulk comic, and they published it in the issue where he becomes merged Hulk, and Keown was talking about his life experience, and he was going on about having worked for Aircell for Barry Blair. Like Barry Blair transformed a wrestling comic into a superhero comic just for him, just for Keown.
Well, this, like I said, I forgot this. This is one of the more popular black and white boom books from the 1980s. I always kind of meant to read it, but I think by the time this came around, I was kind of done with Aircell. I'd tried a lot of Aircell comics, and the ones I liked got canceled. And Aircell had been around for a few years by then, so I never tried it out. And I always kind of meant to. Like I said, then I saw a couple of people, I think on Twitter, talking about Warlock 5. Going, oh, I always loved Warlock 5. It was one of my favorite. And talking a little bit about its history. And one of them, so I went on eBay and to see how much they cost for, and then I got confused because it turns out there's 2 volumes of Warlock 5. And they're not expensive. Like mycomicshop.com has them for like $2.50 an issue. Then somebody mentioned something about, oh, the omnibus should really stop at issue 13. And I thought they were, talking about a hypothetical omnibus, which they may have been talking about, because then I looked and there's an actual omnibus of Warlock 5. Except, and what happened with Warlock, it's done by Full Collection. Den Bouvais, Beauvais, he's the artist, and Gordon Derry is the writer. And
it's Beauvais is from Quebec, and the S is silent. Denis Beauvais.
Okay. No, there's no I's, just Den.
Den
Beauvais. Den Beauvais. But anyway, I'd never heard of either of them. He's a pretty good artist, though. Mm-hmm. Like, and this is originally from 1989, I think it said, or 88. Does it have the year in it? Well, this omnibus is from 2020. I don't think they had the original year in here, but it may have been 87. But And but what had happened was the people I was reading about, these two guys did the first 13 issues, and then Barry Blair kicked them off the book so he could do Warlock 5. Except Barry Blair's Warlock 5 had nothing to do with this Warlock 5. And then the book was canceled around, I don't know, issue 20. And then and then like 89, they put out a second volume of Warlock 5 that had nothing to do with the first volume of Warlock 5. But in this one, like they did 13 issues before Barry Blair kicked them off the book. But there was unpublished issues 14 and 15 in here. So you get 15 issues. I only read like the first 2. But he's the artist... he's got this style. Let me show you. It's black and white, but he mixes sort of photorealism. I think some of these are actual photos he draws over with sometimes like punk rock, black and white sort of artwork. So it's got an interesting mixture. An early, actual airbrush artwork. So some of it is traditional pen and ink. Some of it's got airbrush and effects. Whoops, I just lost my bookmark. Some of it's got like grayscale airbrush and effects. Some of it's just straight black and white. So it's an interesting mix of different styles. And listen, the guy's Ben Duvet is talented. He's more talented than your average black and white boom artist. That's for sure.
His Wikipedia article says he worked on one of the Dungeons and Dragons editions.
Oh, okay. And he holds the copyright to this. That's what I found interesting, because I was like, oh, who published it? Because that's what I looked at. I was like, oh, who's publishing this? And it says copyright 2020, Den Bouvet. Outland Entertainment, and the logos are registered trademarks of Outland Entertainment. So I guess, yeah. The entire contents of this book, all artwork, characters, and their likenesses of all characters herein are copyright 2020 Den Bouvet. So I'm glad he's got the copyright to his own work. But I wonder if he always had the copyright, or I'd have to look at the original issues to see if they reverted back to him after Aircell disappeared, or what.
But doesn't have Gordon Derry's name in there?
No, not in the copyright line.
But he wrote it.
Yeah, he wrote it, but he's not. The artist holds the copyright to it.
Okay.
So I found that interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of understand if he came up with the concept and then he hired somebody to write the dialogues, but then he would have a plot credit.
Yeah. For international rights, please contact Jeremy at outlandentertainment.com. So if you want to publish, but it's so and in reading the other people talking about Warlock 5, they said one of the fun things about the book is no one really knew what was going on in it. In terms of, like, I only read the first 2 issues, but back here there's a list of sort of all the different characters. We've got like a wizard, a robot, a warlord from the Dark Ages, an ageless sorceress, a power-mad machine gun necromancer, and there's something called the Grid, which I guess is like the Matrix, sort of. And they all are trying to... The Grid sort of keeps reality, is what reality is. And they're always fighting each other to keep the grid stable and to take over from each other different parts of the grid. Like the first 2 issues I read were just like fights between these various factions. They were just like these crazy fights. So very entertaining first 2 issues. I look forward to reading the rest of it. There's a Terminator type robot. He's one of the robot guys. So I think there's just like these groups. I guess he comes out of Dungeons and Dragons. There's these Dungeons and Dragons, different types of groups just fighting each other. And I think includes the unreleased issues 14 and 15. That's what it says up top too. But this was it's funny because when I was reading about it, I was just like, I was like, oh, cool. I really want that. And I looked this up on Amazon, and it's $40 retail. And Amazon had a 20% off coupon. Plus, I had, I think, $6 in Amazon credits. So it ended up costing me $26 for this. I was like, oh. And then it was like just the nostalgia that goes with this 80s black and white boom for me. And just to see like the lettering especially stood out to me. I mean, the artwork stood out to me, and the lettering did, because I think he did his own lettering, Den Bouvet. I don't think there's a letterer credit. And he's clearly a talented guy. Letters for issue 15 by Ed Dukeshire. He's a current guy, right? I know that name. And there's a foreword by Colin Bunn. But just seeing the letter, this sort of amateur 1980s lettering that just doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Because everybody buys comic craft.
Right. And now amateur lettering is all in the balloons and the placement and all that stuff. But the actual lettering itself is professional because they buy a font. The lettering is always a font. The rest of the lettering is amateur when you see amateur. So it's like you just don't see, and it's not bad amateur lettering. I mean, there was a lot of there was a lot of bad amateur lettering, and this really isn't that. But at the same time, it is, amateur lettering to an extent, which you just don't see anymore. Amateur hand lettering, and some of the sound effects are real well done because he's integrating them right into the art. Good evening, Warlock 5 fan club.
I have a collection of an Argentinian comic called The City. Which was actually first published in Italy in Lancia Storia magazine, and a couple of months later it appeared in Spain in one of the books where they usually sold stuff to Warren magazines. Mm-hmm. And I've seen art from those issues of the Spanish comic. They had hand lettering, which looks kind of crude because the artist's very good, but he's not very good at lettering. But the collected edition from the Spanish publisher has computer lettering.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to replace the original with modernized.
Well. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. It can go either way. Like
it doesn't look bad.
They replaced the lettering on, what was it, First Kingdom, the Jack Cat stuff, which I think was probably a good idea.
Right.
That stuff's pretty illegible. But
this one,
Crack. I've never read this before, so I'm enjoying reading it through for the first time. So I haven't seen this thing, though. Back in the day, I always meant to pick it up, but I never did. And I forgot about it until just last weekend.
Yeah, it wasn't until I was looking up the company and the names of the title of the books. It's like, I remember seeing these at the comic book shop.
Air sale stuff?
And yeah. And I am sure I must have picked up a few of them.
I bought Elf Lord. I remember that was one I picked up. I think Barry Blair did that one.
There's one called Samurai. I'm almost sure I picked that up. Cat and Mouse.
That one I never got.
That one I might have gotten. And then there's other ones that they were the ones publishing Men in Black.
Yeah.
Yeah, Men in Black came up through there.
I think Warlock 5 may have come out just after I lost interest in most air cell stuff, kind of. There's a soundtrack out there for it as well. I've been hunting for a long time with no luck. One guy in Discogs has a copy, but he doesn't want to sell. Unfortunately, unable to digitize it either. Hold on. I have a Comic Crack tie-in right now, too, this week. Terrence was talking about this week on his show, Mike Allred's Dead Air. This is the very first Mike Allred thing I ever picked up in 1989. This is what got me into his stuff. There's a very sort of what's his name, Nagel look to some of the stuff. The 80s sort of poster designer. Like I said, and it's about sort of the end of the world. And what's funny is, like I said, Comic Crack, he did on his channel, he was talking about this because he just got it. And on Twitter, he posted a picture of it and tagged Mike Allred in it. So he talked to Mike Allred for a minute on Twitter. And I have no idea how Mike Allred got from there to my channel, but he left a mess. Mike Allred actually left a message on my channel this week because where is it? He said, I hit this for the Love and Rockets pick and got rewarded by seeing one of my issues of the Atomics on screen with Herb Trimpe. And then a nice thing said about my covers. Good times. So Mike Allred happened to click on my channel. I'm holding up my new issue of Love and Rockets. He said that's why he clicked on it. But he happened to click on my channel the week I had one of his Atomics covers out on my top of my printer in my museum spot, which I show at the beginning of every one of my pull lists. And so that's where he said that I had one of his Atomics covers, and I had Hulk 168, the implied nudity one we were talking about last week. So I showed those two, and I even said there's his run, Mike Allred's run on Atomics has a particularly good run of covers. I really like his covers. And I said that too. That's why I was like, oh, thanks for saying the nice things about my covers. But I'm like, that's a strange coincidence. Have you ever met him, Wilson? I've never met Mike Allred.
I've never met him. I've colored over his artwork on some Pogs. Back in the day when when Marvel was doing them, and I colored them for Marvel Vision, which was the magazine that replaced Marvel Age. So they were advertising these Pogs. So I colored some Pogs over his artwork, but I never met him. I'm sure I returned artwork to him because he did a few Marvel projects here and there around that same time.
Ecstatics and the
right. He did
early
Ecstatics,
2000s.
and he did one of the yearbooks where he drew Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, a story where Spider-Man asks Sue out on a date. And so there was like this story that was like that. So I remember like holding the artwork and sending it back to him, but I've never got to talk to him directly.
I was just wondering if he clicked on Comic Crack's video where he was talking about Dead Air, because he, like he said, he interacted with Comic Crack on Twitter for a minute, and then my video showed up in the recommended feed or something like that. Or it's just be a strange coincidence that he clicked on my video the same week that he saw Comic Crack on Twitter. So I was just wondering. I was like, I wonder what that connection is that made him, besides, as he said, seeing Love and Rockets and clicking on it because of that. How did he see the Love and Rockets? Because I'm sure my videos don't end up in a lot of feeds, but they probably end up in Comic Crack's recommended videos because we watch each other's videos.
Right. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell why it's not why the guy who owns the Warlock 5 soundtrack doesn't know how to digitize it. It's cassette only. 1987.
Wow.
It's the writer. It's the Warlock 5 writer who created the
soundtrack.
The soundtrack. Yeah, he's got. Gordon Derry has 4 cassettes with his own musical work, self-released in Canada.
Yeah, unfortunately, no comments on my channel. He did repost my message and answered my question, though, which was not. Yeah, I'm thinking the only thing was he somehow he may have clicked on your video over to YouTube and seen mine on the recommended over to the side. Otherwise, it's a weird coincidence that he found my channel, the same time, the same week that Comic Crack talked to him on Twitter. So that brought up Dead Air. But he also said, let's see, I was like, oh, he said, oh, thanks for sticking with me. Why I get to keep doing what I love. Wait till you see what's on my drawing board right now. Hints, spins off from the recent Space Age series. Lifelong dream come true. I was like, oh, okay. So he's got something else that spins off from his Superman Space Age series. Yeah, cassette only that technology is out there. It's not that hard. Yeah, I actually can digitize cassettes. I've done it plenty of times.
Yeah, I know the technology is out there, but if I had cassettes and I wanted to digitize them, I just wouldn't feel I would just forget it because I'm not in the mood to get to get whatever device I need, even if it's just something easy to plug and play.
This is all you need. This is how I digitized all my cassettes. Right here, cassette player, still have it. You put the 1/8-inch jack into the headphones. You plug the other 1/8-inch jack into your Mac, and you just pull up whatever sound recording you get and hit record. That's all it takes.
Yeah,
there's like nothing to it.
Yeah, Stephen Grant, when he had the comic book resources column, he was talking about getting a bunch of his old LPs from the 70s in MP3 format. And he got something that was actually pretty easy to do. He just plugged in a USB stick and the player would do the rest.
Yeah, that's not hard to do at all, even without that automatic stuff.
Yeah, but
I always use a program called Amadeus to do mine, but you can use just about anything these days.
All you need is somebody too lazy to even want to figure it out.
Counting you guys keep a lookout now as well for that tape. Warlock 5 fans need to hear it, I think.
I'm able to find it for $5.99 on eBay. It doesn't seem
what was
like
that?
I see it on eBay for $5.99.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know if it's like that's the right one. That's the thing, because it looks like there might also be a band named Warlock, Triumph and Agony. So maybe
this is
that's
Warlock 5.
So it would be under Warlock 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Warlock 5, and the artist is Gordon Derry, so probably not.
But I'll talk about Love and Rockets now, since this is what got Mike Allred to click on my channel. He's got his Fuck AI t-shirt.
Nice.
And yeah, there is a band. He said, "You found it on eBay?" What? There's a band named Warlock. Yes. So
there are probably several bands named Warlock.
Yeah.
There's Beto. I mean, there's Jaime's back cover and Beto's front cover.
Okay. Yeah. You have to, artists need to start understanding something. The cat's out of the bag, the genie's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in. Your future as artists is fucked.
Kevin Kobasic had the best quote about his hatred of AI. I actually screenshot it just so I could say it. Kevin Kobasic's a friend of ours. You know Kevin, right, Wilson?
Yes.
He wrote, "Maybe I'm just bitter. Actually, there's no maybe about it. I'm tremendously bitter. I'm bitter that I wasted my life trying to find my unique voice as an illustrator. And if I land on that one personal godhead of a style that sets the world on fire and is uniquely me, it becomes worthless the second some asshole types in the style of." And I was like, you know what? That hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, it does.
If you actually, you work your whole life to try to develop your style, and if you actually get successful at it, someone now can just put in the style of Bill Sienkiewicz and boom.
You know how a bunch of news websites post press releases in their entirety without any sort of editing, and that's like 99% of them, and they've been doing it for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It means that nobody needs to produce a press release anymore. You just put it, you just ask ChatGPT to write a press release about something, and it will, and it's there. So yeah, I'm for writing it. I know that for corporate writing, I know that it's done. They don't need to hire anybody anymore. You guys are next.
Yep. But this, as much as I love Love and Rockets, as much as I love reading each new issue, it is not the best way to read Love and Rockets. That's why when I see this in the back, the first 50 classic issues they have now in a box set kind of thing, I'm like, I wouldn't spend $200 on this, whatever it is, $400, just because Love and Rockets is published so they're not even published like stories just start and stop. Like Jaime's stories in the back are 3 different stories. He's in the middle of 3 different stories that he's telling here. And you just get pieces of each one. Like, it's fine with me. I like it. I like to read them monthly. But I would never recommend, if somebody wanted to try out Love and Rockets, I would never recommend them getting an individual issue. Because any individual issue is in the middle of 3 stories. I mean, they look good. I love them. And it's like, even like Beto's got that. Beto's gone so meta. You see this up here? That's one story, and those are usually stories that are like the one of his characters, Fritzy, is an actress, and this is the story of one of her movies. So he puts those out. Sometimes they don't even. I mean, often they're not serialized. This is like one of his 6x9 graphic novels, and this is the story of one of the movies. So you get the comic, and it's actually an adaptation of the fictional movie. So I assume he's eventually going to publish this in one of those volumes. But at the bottom down here, we have another strip. I don't know how he's going to publish those, but this is the movie that Fritz did many years ago. And this down here is the sequel movie that her daughter did, related to her movie. So it's like this whole meta concept that's like, whoa. So it's like you read through the top part, then you go back and you read through the bottom part. And they sort of tell the same story. They tell the same story as if one movie was remade from the other. So it's really a weird concept. I spent my whole life mastering my music instruments, and now a damn computer is coming along that can mimic it. I don't see guitar players complaining on the MC. Yeah. Really? I heard loads of old musicians complain about sampling. Well, sampling's different, but here's the difference. Once again, I think Kevin said this on his set. The difference in the comparison between music sampling and AI and art. In music sampling, all the huge companies were against music sampling, and all the huge companies had the clout to make people eventually pay for their music sampling. So now if you want to sample music, you generally have to pay for it because all the huge corporations were on the side of not sampling, or you pay for your samples. Now with AI art, all the huge corporations are on the side of not paying, because what they do is they scrape art from all the artists from the internet, and they don't want to pay royalties on any of the art, and they don't want to pay anything on any of the art. So now, instead of the sampling was really about like DJs in the ghetto and kids at parties playing on turntables that eventually went into the music industry versus the huge mega corporations. Now it's, the huge mega corporations won then, and they're going to win now. So, but then they won and got paid. Now they're fighting to not have to pay. So it's completely turned on its head when you use that example. Unless you were being sarcastic and went over my head. The famous ones, yes. What I found is that people enjoy live music don't even know what samplers are. Oh, that's
right.
As fewer people enjoy. Yeah, fair point. That, like I said, that's my friend Cavern.
Yeah, I guess the difference between music and drawn, painted art is that music can be done can be made at the in the moment, and
Right.
art you only show people the final product. So
art isn't music is performance. You can still get paid for the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Art is not performance.
No. Except for those guys,
that's the art.
Except for those guys in the town square doing caricatures for tourists.
Yeah. My friend Ed does that. They hire him to do parties and bar mitzvahs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think when it comes to AI, we have much more pressing things that should be concerning to us than some guy sampling an artist to push out some half-baked. That's just it. It's not half-baked. It's getting better and better. And like Kevin said, you can work your whole life to develop a style. And now somebody can just say, in the style of Bill Sienkiewicz, and it produces a Bill Sienkiewicz piece. And it's not half-baked. That's the thing. So many strides have been made toward an AI art that it's like, wow.
Yeah, all it took is 2 years.
And it's especially good at realism. Though, I think we've had this discussion before. Guys who rely on technique in realism are the guys in most danger, because that, like like Art Germ I've mentioned before. He's in the most danger because his art relies on technique, a sort of realism, those are cartoon realism, and AI can copy that real easily.
Yeah. Yeah, and I happen to know that in the style of Art Germ is one of the most used commands in
the style of Art Germ. Yeah, no, I understand but half-baked has been. AI was half-baked for a long time. I'm like I said, that was a lot of people's been saying, AI art is just not that good. Who's going to want it? It's all half-baked. But it has gotten a lot better.
Because every once in a while I go to one of the online art generators, the free ones, because most of them want you to sign up so they can have your email. But this one's free. This one's free and doesn't ask you for anything. And I spent 20 minutes there doing something in the style of Nick Cardy. Works pretty well. In the style of Mobius, it doesn't. That thing can't reproduce Mobius yet.
And you know how I think it's going to go? I don't know if I said this here or somewhere else. That scene in Blade Runner when he's examining the photograph and he goes, a computer, move up coordinates, top left corner. I go up to the top left corner. Go here, and he actually go around the corner but he's just sitting there talking to the computer, and it's zooming in different places and doing that. I think at some point you'll be able to talk to the computer and say, "Give me Spider-Man drawing, 1/10 Steve Ditko, 30% Todd McFarlane." 10% Umberto Rain, and you would and say, give me pose, arm up, legs down, and it'll give it to you, and then you'll go raise right arm 3 degrees, and it'll do it for you. And it'll go make that 20% Steve Ditko, and it'll give it to you. I think that's the way AI will eventually be. Well, you'll just be talking to the computer, and it will be doing it as you talk to it, just like in Blade Runner.
Yeah,
and then.
How do you think they do holodeck scenarios in Star Trek: The Next Generation in universe?
I haven't watched Star Trek: The Next Generation in a lot of
Yeah.
years, so I don't know.
You remember the holodecks. You just remember
Yeah.
that they went to the holodecks and they had a completely different scene.
Right.
And it was their downtime. Now
Yeah.
imagine the amount of time that they spend coming up with the scenario and how they make it. Because since the computer is almost smart in Star Trek, is almost smart enough to recognize sarcasm.
Right.
Imagine when you're giving it very precise. Very precise direction on how you want a scene to be set up in a 3D environment.
But if you're just doing a comic book cover, think of how fast you could do a comic book cover just talking it. Just describing to the computer what you want.
Yeah. The cover's easier because you don't need continuity.
Let's start with
scenes.
Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1. Okay, raise his arm up 6 inches. Make him crouch 4 inches lower. Spin 12 degrees on the y-axis. And it would do it as you said it, so you could adjust as you could adjust on the fly. You could get the exact angle you want, like really easily. It'd be crazy.
Spider-Man #1 Todd McFarlane cover with Ben Cooper Spider-Man costume. In a few months, the AI is probably going to understand that.
For the record, I happen to like a lot of AI generated stuff I see from people I follow on social media. A lot of very strange looking stuff out there. Yeah, it's like I said. That's why I was disagreeing with your half baked. There's a lot of good AI stuff out there. That's what makes. But it's all based on someone else's style, is what it is. It's all based. It's not like and it's. I don't even know where it comes from. And like I said, I showed my AI stuff where I just turned my own comics into AI, and I'm like, well, where does this even come from? It's bizarre. It's art from the machine. But it's like I had nothing. It's like who made this? I really didn't have much to do with it except to push a button. I didn't even have to, since I had my own drawings to start with. I didn't even have to describe anything. I just ran my own drawings through the machine, and it made them into manga drawings or anime drawings or whatever drawings. And it was just like, wow, whose stuff is this? It's kind of crazy. But yeah, I think Kevin's comment on you spend your whole, if you ever find that one style that everybody loves and works for you, now somebody can just stay in the style of Wilson Ramos and
Right.
everybody can do it. It's like, oh, I've wasted my life. Was that comic book guy?
One of the Halloween episodes.
Yeah. Oh, what is it? Oh, Aquaman, you can never love a surface dweller. And then like the meteor comes and destroys Earth. That's when he says, oh, I've wasted my life. But new issue of Love and Rockets was good. I enjoyed it, but I would never recommend it for somebody who's never read Love and Rockets to read any individual issue. What do we got here? Issue 14? Issue 14. Pick up any of the collected editions if you want to start reading Love and Rocket. But it's fun to see their artwork so big because the collected editions aren't always this big.
Right.
Did you make it to the comic shop this week, Wilson?
I did not. So no new comics for me this week. Just did not make it out.
Did not get out. Let's see, what else did I get? The new issue of Damn Them All. Charlie Adlard. I always want to say Allred instead of Adlard because I knew Allred first. And Charlie Adlard. And I've certainly reached the conclusion that Simon Spurrier overwrites to my taste. Sometimes he's just got big blocks of texts that I don't think really need to be there. And next time I read it through, I might skim over some of them. But good stuff. This is the one that's like, what if John Constantine had a niece and she took over the magic using in the family? Takes place in a London that's sort of been taken over by magic. And I'll say it again, I hate these Image Comics giant logo covers. I mean, I just don't. Not one of these covers sticks in my memory. All of them have been giant logos and one character standing there, and that's not unusual for Image Comics. And it just hurts me a little to see covers so nondescript.
When I see that, I almost see a similarity to like those 60s novels, but at least the novels, the paintings have story to them.
Right.
It's
sort of a movie poster thing too.
Yeah,
I think.
where the artwork at least is telling a story, and then you have the big blocky letter, but it works together because at least there's something going on.
Yeah,
it's just the pose and.
Oh, pardon me. This is Boom, not Image. Same thing. I see it a lot of Image comics. I probably see it a lot of Boom comics. I see it a lot of indie comics.
Yeah.
Where you
See, to me, that style of artwork only works like when you're on something like Comixology, where the text can be read easily, you recognize the character. When you're looking at it on screen and you're scrolling through a whole bunch of books.
It's a blown up icon.
Yes, so that works that way, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me on the stands.
No, not at all.
Nothing about that makes me want to go, hey, I want to give that a try. If I was someone already reading it, then I wouldn't care.
I'm just disappointed because I like nice covers with my comic. And if, it is Charlie Adler's name that is selling this to me. But still, I'd like a nice cover.
Yeah, I mean, do the credits need to be that big on the cover? That just takes up so much real estate.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I'll never understand it. It doesn't work for me, but they do. Well, I think too, covers are such an afterthought these days because covers don't, unless there's unless they're an alternate cover. Covers don't sell comics. No, nobody sees, hardly anybody. I mean, I still do, but hardly anybody sees a cover for the first time in the comic shop and buys that comic. I mean, it used to be everybody did that because that was what the newsstands were. Now it's like, a small portion of us do that. I still do it, but hardly anybody does.
Yeah.
Did you read any comics this week, Paolo?
Nope. I've started a government program for unemployed people for unemployed people, which is always a good idea to take because otherwise they take your unemployment away.
Right. Do you is that one where they give you training or?
It's supposed to be one where they give you training, but it's just something to remove people from the unemployment statistics.
Oh, okay. That does happen.
I did pick up two electric cars to test drive. I drove the, well, you don't know the brand. It's DS. It's a spin-off of Citroën with slightly more luxurious. And I drove the DS3 E10s, and today I exchanged it for a Peugeot E2008. It's an urban crossover.
Mm-hmm.
The closest vehicle you have in America to it, because it's the same platform after Fiat Chrysler merged with Peugeot, is the Jeep Avenger, which is a front-wheel drive only Jeep.
That's a little strange,
isn't it?
Yeah. let's see, what else did I read? Creep Show, Volume 2, Issue 3. I got the Guillaume March cover again. Let me show you that up big and... This one, oh, look at that. She's eating a head. Or he's eating a head. I don't know if it's a he or she. It's a he, right? Because it's Creep Show.
Yeah, I believe the what was he called? The Creeper? The Crypt Keeper. I believe was a male.
No, the Crypt Keeper was EC, right?
Don't recall.
I don't remember. Zoe Thorogood, whose name I know, but I don't know where they're from, does the first story. And I got to say, this was one of my favorite stories so far in this magazine. And the second story is by, who does this? Joe Farelli is the writer. Gordon Suzuka is the artist. And the second story was okay. Most of the stories are okay. But the first story was really good. You know, there's fewer really good stories, but the really good story was about, you know, they're both like 10 or 11 page stories, was about this woman who discovered a way to make herself immortal. And then the rest of it was just sort of the horrors of immortality, where she went on through time and saw all sorts of horrible things, and the apocalypse and post-apocalypse, and then more apocalypse, then diseases and this and that. So it was well done, though. It was really, I really enjoyed that first story. It may have been my favorite of the series. So good issue, and nice covers. I really like these. The covers are what made me buy this one. Because like the stories are, most of them are okay, not a lot of standouts. And when the first series was done, 6 issues, I was wondering if I wanted to keep getting it, because I knew the second series was coming out. So I happened to be moving them from my current comics section to another shelf where is my anthology comics section. And I just happened to be like thumbing through the covers. And I went, wow, these are really nice covers. I'm going to put volume 2 on my pull list just because I really like these covers. And I think there's also, I just put on my pull list, there's a holiday special of it coming out. So, but like, even if the stories are all B's and not many A's, there's a lot of A's on the cover. And there's, of course, multiple covers too, but I just picked the one I want, which I think for the first 3 issues was March's covers. Good stuff. Good stuff. I actually finished reading a book this week, too.
A book with no pictures.
A book with no pictures.
Just words?
Just words. I usually read just words on my train ride in.
Okay.
Though I did read some comics this week that I'll show you. Some digital comics. But I've been reading over the leg because I only go into the city 2 days a week. But I read L.A. Confidential. Who wrote that one? McElroy? I forget who the author was. But they made a movie out of it back in like 1998 or something like that, 97, 98. And I always liked the movie. And for some reason, like, you know what? I want to read the book. And the book was pretty good. The book was pretty good, but I wouldn't say great. And it was very sort of staccato, film noir written. Short scenes, lots of violence, things happening quickly, but a long book. The book was like, I don't know, over 500, maybe 600 pages. There's lots of, and the book was like all plot. Because the movie there's a lot of plot in the movie. The book has even more plot. But it was a good book to read on the train for a few weeks. I know Paolo doesn't get any train reading done. Do you ever read on the train, Wilson? When
I do usually when I commuted, that's where I did a lot of my reading.
Oh yeah.
Whether it was comic books, novels, audiobooks, just I went through so many while I was going to work, and I think that's how I read all the Harry Potter books.
Okay.
Where
Never read them.
I started them as books, and then I switched over like the last few as audiobooks. But
that reminds me, I have to put a check mark in my audiobook tally of Great Gatsby. Because I've been on my commute, I have to drive to the train. I got like a 20-minute drive to the train station. So I've been listening to various audiobooks of The Great Gatsby over the last 2 years now. So I just once again finished the who does it? Where's my Leslie Odom version of The Great Gatsby. There we go. That was my 7th time through the Leslie Odom version. The Jake Gyllenhaal version is on the lead at 16 times. I've listened to the Jake Gyllenhaal version. So I've heard The Great Gatsby many times now. Matter of fact, I have to find more people to read it to me. As I drive to the train station.
Somebody with a funny voice.
Yeah, see?
Maybe Bobcat Goldthwait.
Bobcat Goldthwait.
I can't really on the bus anymore because it shakes too much.
You know, in the 90s when I used to take the bus in and out, I could never read on the bus. But my bus ride was so long. I was on the bus for the short version was an hour and 10 minutes. The long version was an hour and 40 minutes. So eventually, what I did, the Great Gatsby ASMR. Hello, we're about to read to you today, The Great Gatsby. We're about to whisper to you today, The Great Gatsby. So I was like, finally, after years of riding the bus, because it would always make me car sick riding, and I don't usually get car sick, but if I read, I'd get car sick. So I finally said to myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read at the stops, because there were so many stops that I'd be like, whatever book I was reading, I'd be, riding along. We'd come to the stop. I'd read a page or two. I'd put it back down. We'd come to a stop. I'd read a page or two. And after about 6 months of that, I stopped noticing the stops. And I can then read on the bus. But it took a while. It was not overnight. But I was like, wow, I can read on the bus now. So you actually probably could learn to read on the bus.
Oh, I can read comics on the bus.
I always read books. So
yeah, trying to read a book on a bus, that shakes too much.
You know, it was funny. I cannot, like, even on the train, which is, it's much easier to read on a train, much smoother. I do not like to read my comics at least the ones I buy, my weekly comics. I do not like to read them for the first time on the train. I like for the second time on a train, for whatever, for a digital comic I can read on the train. I did that this week. But if I buy, my comics, I like to sit in that chair back there in the quiet and read them. At least I have at times, like for my second read, taken them in onto the train with me. I'm okay with that. But it's like, for some reason, for the first read, I just want to be sitting in that chair reading them. That where I'm sort of most comfortable and it's most quiet and I'm most at peace and I can appreciate the comic most. I want to give it all. I want to give it every chance, because when you're on that train, anything can set you off to not like a comic you're reading. Commuting.
Right. The mood can hit. There have been times where you might even miss your stop.
I almost did that only once, and it was so disconcerting. Because first of all, I'm on I take the train to Nanuet, which is the second to last stop. And so I'm on the train anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour. I don't even know what it is anymore. It's if I get express, I get this. I'm on the off-peak train, so they take longer. So it was one night I was getting home and I had a headache. Just had a headache. Was not, was in that mood. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to escape my headache. I had no aspirin on me or anything. So I was reading my book to sort of escape my headache. And I was really into it, the reading. And so I'm reading, and it seems like I'm on that train forever. And all of a sudden, the whole train, we're stopped. I've lost track of where I am. All of a sudden, I realize the train is stopped. It's dark out, so you can't even see which stop it is. It's so dark out. I'm come out of it. All of a sudden, I realize my train car is empty. I'm like the only one on the train car. It's stopped, and I'm like, where am I? Is this Nanuet? I think this is Nanuet. I have no idea. So I got up really quickly because the train was stopped for a good 30 seconds, minute.
Right.
Trains only stop that long before they get going again. So I rush out of the car, and I was just like so disoriented. I was like, because I was in this weird reading a book, escaping a headache headspace where I went right back to my headache and not knowing where I was, and got off the train. And I'm like, holy cow, I almost missed my stop. That had never happened before. Happened like last year. Never happened to me before. Never happened to me since. And just even like I had to walk to, and usually when I get off the train, there's anywhere from, depending on what time of the day it is, anywhere from 6 to 12 people walking with me back to their car. Sort of like you're in this group of people walking to the parking lot. Right. This time they'd all made it already. I'm walking by myself, like going, and of course it's done. And I'm just like, I was so disoriented the whole way home, even because it's like I was like, I don't know where I was. I don't know where I was mentally, and then I woke up and I didn't know where I was physically. It was really strange. Really strange. But I did read comics on the train. Digital comics. I think we were talking about Kickstarter last week or sometime, and I mentioned that I now Kickstarter is the most expensive way to buy comics. So I'm torn because I really don't want to buy $84 copies of The Great Gatsby in hardcover.
Right.
And, I don't really want to get caught off in that, but I want to support people I know. So I've said, I'll get the digital versions. Why not? Because like the digital versions can be expensive, but at $8 for a digital version, I'm okay. Because the non-digital version is like $16 or $20 for a comic, and that's just, even supporting friends, it's like, oh my goodness, that's a lot. But I'm like, you know what? They probably make as much money off the digital version as they do the physical version, maybe even more, because they don't have to do anything to deliver it to me. So I got, I finally read, Painkiller Jane, Beautiful Killers. And I think I got these from the Trigger Girl. And there's volume 1. It's by Palmiotti, Santa Cruz, Astone, and Dave Sharp, who I think letters every independent project that I buy. He worked with us at Marvel.
He taught me lettering.
Taught him lettering. And there's Painkiller Jane, issue 2, Beautiful Killers. That's a Linsner cover. Palmiotti, Santa Cruz, Momoko, Astone, and Sharp. Paper Films double shot. I think double shot means it's 2 issues. And this was pretty good. I'd never read Painkiller Jane before. And I was more impressed with Jimmy's writing in this than I've been before. Because I've always found his writing sort of middle of the road, not particularly good, not particularly bad, but okay. I thought this was some pretty good stuff, and it's Painkiller Jane. It's spy stuff, so it's spy versus spy stuff, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I must. I look forward to more Painkiller Jane from Jimmy Palmiotti. I actually liked it better than, this is the other one. I think this is the one I actually bought. I paid extra to get the digital versions of Painkiller Jane. I think this is Trigger Girl 6, Justice, and this one was okay. Which was this by? Palmiotti and Santa Cruz again, and Connor and Sharp. I think Amanda Connor did some of the design pages in this, is what it was. Amanda Connor is, once again, I know her. She from my Marvel days, and she's went to high school with a friend of ours who one of my Steve Bunch, she went to high school with, who worked at Marvel with me and also went to college with me. Like, I think Amanda did stuff like this. That's Amanda's.
Yeah, Amanda was the first artist on the Painkiller Jane series when those came out.
And she's sort of this assassin who works for talking animals. There's a backstory. It's sort of an ecological comic in terms of animals can talk, and they can, in this world, and they can hire hit women to take out the people who are destroying the environment. So, I mean, I like this artist. What is his name? Santa Cruz, did some nice stuff on all 3 of these. And I think I don't know the name of it, but I backed Jimmy's latest Kickstarter too. Once again, for the digital version, which I think you can find, and I think it goes off this month, maybe even this week. So if you want to support Jimmy's stuff, he's easy to find on Twitter and find a link to his stuff. But yeah, I was finally like, you know what? I may as well read these digital comics I bought. And there's a few more I have to read. I also have, what do I have on here? Apocalypse Boulevard, which is, I don't know if you know Buddy Scalera.
Yes, I know Buddy. I've done work for him in the past, and I've known him for years.
Yeah. This is Buddy Scalera. I knew from, he worked at Wizard in the 90s. And we used to have Wizard Marvel football games that he'd come. Really nice guy. But I think this is 4 issues all collected together. Yeah, 115 pages that I haven't read yet, but I think I got it this year. Once again, Kickstarter. Get the digital stuff. That's you know what? The paper stuff may be too expensive for me on Kickstarter, so I'm going to get the digital stuff. That way I can still support my friends, read some comics, and I don't have to pay $25 for a comic. And Paulo can do that too in Portugal and get the digital version. Do you read anything digital, Paulo?
I plead the 5th.
Oh, anything legal digital?
Yeah.
I do not recommend that you read comics illegally. There.
Wait, there's a 3rd issue coming out too of this is the one that I know Wilson knows on TikTok also. They've Bad Ink Studios. They've built a pretty big TikTok following.
Yeah. I haven't read any of the issues yet, but I like the stuff they're doing. Yeah.
They're good stuff. There's the 1st issue. It's by what are their names? Schultz and Roberts. Who's who here? Evan Schultz and Lydia Roberts. Lydia Roberts is the artist, and Evan Schultz is the writer. And he also does how-to videos on TikTok that have gotten quite popular. And I think I right before I noticed Wilson was friends with him, he showed up in my feed too. And what's good about these two is I was like, oh, I like whatever video he showed of the art, and the link to his stuff, to their stuff, was right in his TikTok feed, and they took Apple Pay, which is one of the easiest things to use on an Apple project because you don't have to do anything. They don't have to. It's like you don't have to enter any credit card numbers, anything like that. You just use your fingerprint, and I think the digital versions were only $2 or $3 an issue. Maybe $3. I can't remember. I may have paid $6 for the 2 issues. So it was like real simple and easy to get. I was like, man, all digital comics should use Apple Pay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy both. Like I said, there's 2 issues out. They look like they're 39. So they're about 34 pages of comics probably. And I guess each issue has its own separate sort of sci-fi Twilight Zone-ish story. And they're about to launch issue 3 on Kickstarter, I think. So I'll probably get the digital version of that too, because the first 2 issues were real enjoyable, and you should check out Bad Ink Studios on TikTok for some good how-to comic videos.
Yeah,
and he's got a YouTube channel too, because I think he was just showing they got sent the 100,000 subscribers YouTube plaque.
Oh, okay.
For those of you who don't know, when you get 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, they send you a plaque. So that's pretty cool.
So everyone watching, make sure you subscribe to us. Yeah, I stumbled onto him when he was again just being on TikTok, and then he started doing a bunch of them on lettering and stuff like that. And it's like he does a really good job showing what's involved. And I think he originally started with coloring first.
Right.
And then he went over to doing the tutorials on lettering. It's like great
and they're sort of short and pithy.
Yeah.
And he talks about conceptually, like people are like, how would you letter sound coming out of a TV? How would you letter somebody who's really loud but then gets sick? How would you letter?
Yep.
And I liked he had one video release recently that was like, I think the headline was, the solution to every one of your comic book problems is in Watchmen. Like an example of every single thing is in Watchmen.
That's funny. I have to look up that video. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, I don't think I actually watched it. I just saw the title on that one. A new comic I got this week by Rob Williams and Pye Parr, PYEPARR. I don't know who either of those guys are, but it's Petrolhead. And
is that a jalopy? Is that a jalopy? Yeah.
Yep. And I picked it. I liked the artwork in it. And the coloring reminded me very much of 1980s Ken Stacy. Do you guys know who he is?
Yeah.
He appeared in Epic Illustrated. That's where I know him from, and a few other things.
I think Heavy Metal magazine.
Heavy Metal. I think he had colorings, though. He did it airbrush or whatever. He had the coloring motifs were similar to this, and that's what caught my eye.
I don't know.
Like I said, I kind of liked the artwork.
Okay. Ken Stacy had a certain subtlety that's missing there.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not the same, but it's the somehow it's the only thing I've ever seen that's ever reminded me of Ken Stacy coloring. So, I don't know. I'll have to pull out some Ken Stacy to compare and contrast, but it's about the reason it's called Petrolhead is because it takes place in the future. Not the greatest cover either. This cover would not have made me buy this comic. Takes place in some future where at some point in time, the people who were running whatever city this is, whatever giant, megalopolis this is, had to keep the everyday people distracted with, bread and circuses. So they had these races, and they invented these robots to drive in the races. So you'd have whatever I think they're called. I think the robots were internal combustion based too somehow. That's rather whatever. That's why they're weirdly car looking. Some of them. So they were part of this big. They were part of the mainstream entertainment of this city for years, but the races were it was as much pro wrestling as it was races, except the robots weren't necessarily in on the pro wrestling part. The people behind the races would manipulate things, and the reason they invented these robots was so they didn't have to care about them, but they also gave the robots emotions and the ability to feel pain, so it would heighten the drama for the viewer. So that's the origin. That's the origin of these robots in general. Now it's years later. There is no more, robot racing anymore. But some of these robots are still around, just kind of living life. And they have to go to the smog portion of the city where the poor people live. So there's the portion of the city with the good air and the portion of the city with the smog. And if you're poor, you got to go live. If you're poor or a robot, you got to go live in the smog section. So he's in the smog section, living his life, building an illegal car. And meanwhile, we get some cut scenes with this young girl and her father, who's a scientist. And they've just invented something in their lab to help clean the air. They just invented some like nanites or something that help clean the air. And then we don't see them again until the end when we go back to Petrolhead, this robot here, and he's living his life, building his car, talking to a mechanical bird. And these security robots show up chasing someone. And he gets in the middle of it. And it turns out it's this, the young girl and her father, the scientist, who the robots are chasing. So now you get the idea that who's ever in charge doesn't want these smog-eating nanites out there. So I guess that's the setup. So at the end, the robot race car driver and these two humans go on the run in his car that he just built.
All of that sounds overly contrived.
Oh, it is, but it was well done. Okay. I mean, yeah. I don't know how they got this. This idea was obviously contrived over lots and lots of. You just don't come up with this idea on a napkin.
Right.
You got to have been working on this idea for a while and adding to it, or coming up with the idea of I want a robot car driver and a scientist and two humans running away. How do I get there? I mean, it's like you're right. I mean, it is overly contrived, but I don't think to me, that's not, it's okay. It's not a criticism, kind of. It's as an observation, it's true. But I'm okay with it. I put it, I don't know if I put the next issue or the whole, I think I put the whole thing on my pull list. I was like, you know what, I'll read that. And it was a $5 extra size first issue too. So that was good. Start your robo engines. It was fun. I liked the art. And like that's a good way to describe it, because it's like just how we got here is like how we got to that robot driving a car with the two humans running away from the other robots is like, that's a lot of story to get there. I mean, just the fact that it's like not even a current robot driver. The robot races have been over for years.
It seems to be like a good pilot episode to start a series.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on in there.
Why are the robots using internal
don't ask too many
combustion
questions. First of all, I know I was in for a ride when in the first scene, the robot is smoking a cigar. Okay? And then all of a sudden the people he's laying a rose at the grave of another robot driver in town. And all the humans start going, oh my God, he's smoking. It's a robot and he's smoking. The robot's smoking, Mom. Hey, you, listen, last chance. So like the security robots, all the humans are yelling at him for smoking, and the security robots are coming over to blow him up if he doesn't move because he's smoking. And they're like, what do they say? It is illegal for a petrol head to be in this sector. You know it. Last warning, retreat to the nearest smog zone or we fire. It's like, he can't, since he's a combustion-based robot, petrol-based petrol head. He can't. So I was like, I knew I was in for a ride with the robot smoking on page 1. Here he is on page 1 where, I mean, there's absolutely, as far as I know, and there was no explanation for it, reason for a robot to be smoking. That's just probably some idea they thought of when they're overly contriving the whole concept.
Drugs are bad for you kids.
The robots will be paying some IUC.
Yeah, that's our road tax. They're introducing a new road tax for cars that are pre-2007 smog controls.
Okay.
And telling those people, the thing is, if people are driving pre-2007 cars in 2023, they can't afford a new one, and they are being told that they can turn in their cars to but only if they exchange them for a brand new electric car. So people who can afford 2,000 euro cars are being asked to stop driving, which is their only means of personal transportation, and buy a $50,000 car instead. But the government fell this week because of a corruption scandal. So
time for a new government over there.
Yeah,
we don't here in the U.S. We don't have governments that fall, since we don't have that kind of parliamentary election. It's like, our president can commit crimes, and nothing we can do about it till the next election.
If the president does it, it can't be illegal.
Exactly.
Yep.
Very Nixonian.
Very much.
He was the one, I think, who came up with that. Yeah. And this ties into the show Gus. This one, I haven't finished it, but I started reading Habibi this week. Let's see, where's my bookmark? I'm about a third of the way through. There's my bookmark right there. I've read the other side. I read this side. And it's really, really good. I mean, wow. It's really, really good. First of all, the art is terrific. Let me see if I can get you a better look at it. He uses a lot of Middle East sort of Muslim decorative techniques on page because there we go. There in Islam, there's a you're not allowed to draw the human figure. You're forbidden to make icons. They do a lot of stuff with decorative elements like that border right there. So he's got a lot of that influence in there. Let's see if I can find some more. And it's just really well drawn. The storytelling is really nice. Oh, there's some nice pages that are based on stories that I assume are in the Quran, but I don't really know because the story there's the cover of you can see all that that's made to look like Arabic writing, and this is all made to look like an Arabic book. And the story, I'm not exactly sure what year the story takes place. Because at one point there's a motorcycle in the story, but the motorcycle has been around for 100 years now at least. And there's boats. There's a boat with an engine. Boats have had engines for 100 and something years. So it may take place sometime in like the 1910s. So maybe like 110 years old or something like that. And it takes place in some unnamed country, obviously in the Middle East, because it's very, Middle Eastern influenced but like not modern times, but modern enough. I'll say there's another one. There's the very Middle Eastern influenced art. And I think Habibi is the little, if you look there, there's a girl and a little boy. So far, the story's been mainly about the girl who, when she was a child, she was about 12, I think, or 10 even, it may have been. There's a drought in wherever she's from in the deserts of the Middle East. I don't, like I said, I don't think they named the place. And so her parents sold her off to a man who wanted to marry her. And like she's only 10 or 12. So she gets married to him. He's a scribe. So he gets paid to write down stories. So she lives as his wife for a couple of years. I think she's only like 12 or so for a couple of years. And he tells her all these stories, teaches her how to read and write, tells her these stories as he's writing them down. And then when I don't know how long she was with him, a year or two, when thieves just come in and slit his throat and sell her into slavery. So now she's sold into slavery. And there's some good there's some good chase scenes in it too, even where she tries to escape from slavery. But this little boy here, who's she is, I guess, Middle Eastern and sort of brown, light brown skinned, but he's African and dark skinned. So that becomes a point in the book too. And I think she sort of rescues him because they're both in the slave market. They don't know kind of where I guess they just kill slaves sometimes. If they can't sell a slave, they just kill them. And so she kind of rescues him and says that's her little brother. And then the two escape together. And then when they escape, they're like wandering the desert, almost dying. And they find this boat in the middle of the desert. And that's where they live for the next 5 years, on this boat, where she would go out to the caravans and trade sexual favors for food, and he would go off and find one. He didn't know this. He's like 5. He's a real kid. She was like 13. He was like 6. And it was kind of about them growing up together on this boat. And she became known as the desert courtesan witch or something like that. Because the people on the caravan routes got to know her and would stop off and, wait for her to show up with her sexual favors. Eventually she was captured from there and sold to some sultan's harem. And that's where kind of I left it. I read a little bit about her in the harem. Where like her life in the harem became weird, to where the sultan became really enamored with her and told her that I'm just, because he had a harem of 2,000 women. He's like, I'm really bored. It's like, if you can entertain me for 70 days, I'll set you free. And she manages to entertain him for 69 days. On the 70th day, he's like, yeah, I'm bored with you. She freaked out. He threw her into prison. So it's like just this harrowing story, but really well told and really beautiful. And also in that story is mixed in with stories from the Quran that her husband, her husband told her, the scribe, that sort of explain life to her, like help her get through life. And it's been like really, really good, I gotta say. Let's see what Gus has to say about it, because he always don't know if it's true, but I've heard all those decorative elements were done without any digital help. Yeah, they look like they were done by hand. They do. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that they look like they're hand-drawn decorative. I don't think he did any of those digitally. Yeah. A few of the action scenes are so fluid. Yeah, because most of the scenes are static. Her living with her little brother, and they went into issues like her and her little brother, or he's not actually her brother, he's the person she used to take baths together. She was 12, they have their ages here somewhere. He was 6. But as he started entering puberty, he started getting attracted to her. And they had to deal with that kind of. And he didn't know any other people, because he wasn't allowed. She wouldn't let him go to the caravans where she was doing her sexual favors, until one time he snuck there and saw her not doing sexual favors, but getting raped. And that was a whole other harrowing scene. But really, really, I'm enjoying it. And it makes a nice sort of read along with the completely different Warlock 5, two completely different things. But this is just so, I mean, Craig, I got to say, I wasn't a huge fan of Blankets that everybody else loved. But between, Habibi and Ginseng, man, he's really become a favorite, because just really well done. And it also, here's a, comic books aren't just Marvel and DC story for you. It was just this week. It was who was it? Someone we worked at Marvel with, Tim Toohey. Who I think still gets comics on occasion. He lives down south somewhere. I can't remember where. He's been a teacher all these years, art teacher in grade school in Kentucky or somewhere. I forget where. He used to be an editor at Marvel and work with us. And I think he still has his comic shop in New Jersey, which is where he's from, send him stuff down to Kentucky every few months. And he said something that of course triggered me. He was like, he got the latest crossover event from Marvel or DC. And he's like, oh my goodness, he said something about, if you were a new comic fan, you couldn't even understand what's going on. And he said something like, I may have outgrown the medium. And I had just been reading Habibi that, at that same time, which is brilliant. And I of course immediately wrote back, the medium is more than Marvel and DC crossover events. Maybe you should expand out of that arena. I mean, it's like, I outgrew crossover events in 1985. and I'm still reading plenty of comics. But I was just like, another one. You know, to so many people, comic books are Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, that's how you end up with people who then insist on only buying back issues and trying to relive their childhood.
Speaking of which, have you been on the Fossils show in a while?
Last week, the special guest showed some Bill Bailey comics, and then I told them, "Oh, the Brazilians created their own Bill Bailey stories." And I showed them covers from Brazilian Bill Baileys. There's a Brazilian equivalent to the Grid Comics database. It's not as well done, but they have a few covers, and I downloaded them and showed them.
Interesting. Yeah, get people out of that Marvel and DC getup. I was actually saying that to Tim last week. I think it was. I think before you were on the show, I was like, come, because he was like, because Tim sometimes usually you can get him out of it pretty easy. Because he was like, comics are going downhill, and I'm going to prove it this show. I immediately wrote, because that especially triggers me, because I post what comics I buy each week, and each week I buy from 6 to 10 comics. And it's like, do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I'm buying 6 to 10 bad comics a week? Do you think I don't know good comics from bad comics? I'm just buying bad comics? And most people don't think I'm stupid. So that's when they go, oh, well, it's like, yeah, comics are more than Marvel and DC.
Comfort zones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do get it. I mean, there was a time, but by that time I had mostly transitioned to collected editions. But if I went through previews every month, and if I had to choose, there were more graphic novels that I wanted to buy than the ones I could afford, I would drop a couple of them. And sometimes I took the easy way out. I dropped the indie comic and went with the Marvel or DC. Comfort zones.
Yeah. Marvel and DC hasn't been my comfort zone since I was like 16.
Yeah.
So,
but after a couple of years, maybe less, weaned off. Yeah, you're done. You don't feel the need to go back.
Yeah.
Because I kept buying stuff for a few years, knowing that I wasn't liking it. It's because I was used to it, and it was the Avengers. But then all of a sudden I have to stop and I look at what they're. Man, this is ridiculous. These comics are ridiculous. I don't know what they're putting. Let me try to find something else to read.
Yeah. Another one I got this week. It's been a while since an issue of this is out. Issue 3 of Frank Frazetta's Mothman. And this one has been a comedy. It's been sort of a humor, horror humor, I guess I'd call it. There's the Mothman. But the Mothman is really a rich kid from outer space who stole a spacecraft. And he crashed the spacecraft in the middle of this sort of backwoods war between two meth-making drug families. But in this issue, there's like gangster fights, and meanwhile the like police of the insect people who he stole show up and just start blasting humans. They're like, just don't care. They're like, try to keep it below 10,000 dead. So all of a sudden the space aliens just come down. They're like, we're getting our guy, we're getting our ship. And like at one point, the grandma here, since the bug aliens break into her house, Start spraying bug spray at him. And it's just goofy. It's goofy fun. It's more goofy fun. But I think this is the last of the Opus Comics Frank Frazetta stuff that's on my pull list. Since Death Dealer ended and Dawn Attack, I think, ended. And I don't think I'm getting Death Dealer 2099. I just don't care that much.
Death Dealer 2099.
I enjoy these comics, but they're $5 comics. And if I'm paying $5 for a comic, it better be they better be A comics and not B comics.
Yeah, you saw that guy who did that column who complaining that the stores are all gonna close, and he wants all the comics to be $3.99.
I saw the reaction.
I did not see that.
I did not see the actual article, but I saw the reaction from the comic book professionals of the industry talking about how, again, he's focusing on Marvel and DC, not any other books.
Sure, because the stores don't know how to cultivate an audience to try out new stuff. And
I think that's really hard to do.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, especially
that's why they don't do it.
Especially when the customers are all want to stay reading Marvel and DC.
Right.
But yeah, the adapting's not easy. No. But ultimately, it's a little too late. A few years ago, I predicted that Marvel would stop publishing comics in 2023, or they would shut down their publishing division. But it didn't happen. But
the reason Marvel and DC are still doing well is because they raised the price of the comics.
Right, and you have all of the variant covers.
Right, and there are still plenty of people who will pay that to get their comic.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I saw in the this particular seller is complaining about all these variant covers, and it's like, but you don't have to buy them all.
Right.
But there is an audience. People are buying it. That's why they keep making it. If no one was buying it, they wouldn't keep making it. So to me, it's just like, is this person focusing on the wrong thing? Is he so upset that he himself can't figure out how to make it work that he's blaming others for it?
Yeah,
I can understand the shops being upset at the variant covers in terms of sometimes the hoops they have to jump through to get the variant covers are too much for them. And I can understand the fans who want a certain variant cover but can't get it because it's too expensive being upset. Yeah. Those two groups of people I can understand being upset. But the rest of us, I'm okay with variant covers.
Nowadays, do all the guys who want the variant covers, do they pre-order them all, or are there some who still want to get to the shop and see what's available and then complain that their cover's not there?
I think there are people like that. There are still people like I know friends like that. Who are like, oh, I wanted to check out this hot comic that made the news, and I went to the local comic shop and they didn't have it. I'm like,
yeah.
How old are you? You don't know how comic books work?
Right. Yeah.
But they don't know how comic books work because they don't go to the store regularly.
Yeah, but if you have mostly buyers like that, they don't pre-order. They don't.
Right. They're not
and the store has to guess which ones they want, and it is a hassle. Right. I understand.
Yeah, but if you're a collector who wants a 1 in 25 cover, you have to pre-order. That's just about the only way to get it.
And besides, it's been a few years since the smarter shop owners told the guys who want the 1 in 25s, if you want the 1 in 25, you got to buy all the other 25s.
Right. That's what my shop owner does. He's like, I got to sell you.
Even if you don't want to take them home, they make you spend
right. My shop owner's like, I will get, if you want to buy the 1 in 50, that's, it's $150. I'll give you the 50 comics. You can have them. Most people are like, no, thank you.
So then the buyer has to decide: do I spend $150 on one comic that just came out?
Yeah, some people do.
Yeah, okay. And then you put it on to them. If they really want it, then that's how they get it.
I read a lot of Recruiter Zero as a kid. Beetle Bailey.
Yeah, that's the
gotta have them all. Yeah, then there's the gotta have them all guy.
Yeah,
I can still remember his show's not on anymore, but there was a guy on YouTube for years who did Pete's Basement. Matter of fact, I haven't thought of him. I used to watch his show regularly. Guy in Brooklyn, bought comic books, did a comic book show with his buddies every week. And I remember he was a big Spider-Man fan. And he was a Spider-Man completist. And finally he stopped buying Spider-Man altogether because of variant covers. Because at first, being a Spider-Man completist, he was trying to collect all the variant covers. This is like 10 years ago now. But as time went by and they got more and more variant covers and they got more and more expensive, he finally had to throw his hands in the air and say, I don't have a complete collection of Spider-Man anymore. I think they did that to a few people, I imagine. I don't think anyone's got a complete collection of Spider-Man, including all the variant covers. Because that would be crazy.
Yeah. Well, if you were not collecting before 1977 and you're not a millionaire, you cannot possibly have a complete collection of Spider-Man. Because by 1977, I think you could still buy Amazing Fantasy number 15 for $100 or something.
Yeah. I knew somebody, who was it? Bill Wiley, artist. Do you know Bill Wilson?
The name sounds familiar, but I do not.
He did The Secret Defenders, I think he did in the 90s. He may have been a Raider, I can't remember. But he was around Marvel in the 90s. And he lived in Brooklyn. And I can remember Ed Murr and I went over to his house one day so he could show us his Amazing Spider-Mans. And he didn't want his wife to know he had them. So he snuck us in to show them to us. And this is like 1995 or something like that. Who knows? And he just because he loved all the early issues of Amazing Spider-Man, he was buying them, not high grade. It was before CGC, but he was spending, $600, $700, $800 for some of the early Spider-Man issues. So I hope he still has them because they're worth a lot more than that now. But he was collecting. He was the only one I know whoever was actually collecting those early Spider-Man issues. And, he was paying some pretty good 1990s money for them, but not nearly as much as today. I hope he still has them. And his wife's not mad at him. Let's see, another comic I got this week. Dark Ride, issue number 9. This one's got an interesting feel to it because I think it's only a 24-page comic, but it's got cardstock covers. So it feels a little light. It feels good. By the way, I specifically didn't buy a new Dark Horse comic that I think came out last week. It was double-sized. It was about $6 or $7. Who did it? I can't remember who did it. I liked the artist and the writer was okay. But Dark Horse makes such cheap physical comics. I was like, I don't want to buy that. I don't want to spend $7 on a physical comic I do not like the feel of. Because Dark Horse uses cheap paper, just like Marvel and DC, with no cover stock. And even though it was double-sized and felt heavier, it still had cheap cover paper. And I was just like, nah, I can pass. Which I've been doing for years on a lot of Dark Horse stuff. Just because they make such, like, I can tell Matt Kint must be in charge of choosing his own cover stock, because the Matt Kint Dark Horse stuff has good cover stock on it. All the other Dark Horse stuff does not. But this is the one that's about the, Disneyland theme park that's horror based. And their father of these two characters who are now running the park made a deal with actual demons to get the park started. So that's been the story of it, and it's by the Birthright guys, Joshua Williamson and Andre Bresson, with Adriana Lucas and the colorist, and Pat Brousseau is the letterer, and Ashby Florence does the production. Since there's a production credit, I'm going to read it to you. But this has been it's been a good 9 issues. Fun stuff. Oh, for you G.I. Joe fans, looks like there's a Duke comic coming out. Pretty good art right there. Who's doing this? Oh, Joshua Williamson. That's why the ad's in this book. Teams up with acclaimed artist Tom Riley to reveal the origin of G.I. Joe in a world impacted by the arrival of the Autobots and Decepticons. Issue 1 available December 27th. So I guess the G.I. Joe and Transformers universe are now the same universe in Skybound.
Yes. I think that was the whole purpose of that.
Oh, that's right. What was that one I bought the first issue of?
Right. Oh, I forget the name of it.
Something?
Void.
Void Rivals.
Void Rivals. Yes.
Void Rivals. Okay, so that was the purpose of that.
Right. That's the
Void
purpose of that
Rivals.
series, to put together like the Hasbro universe. Whether or not Mask would be part of that, I do not know. And then Rom went over back to Marvel, so I don't know if Rom is ever going to be part of the Hasbro universe.
Yeah, so like I'm not gonna pick it up because don't give one whit about G.I. Joe, but it looks pretty good. The ad looks good. Paolo, were you a fan of G.I. Joe comics? Did you get them over?
No. I never really cared for G.I. Joe. I was a Transformers fan.
Okay. Robots in disguise.
Yeah.
Could be anything. I could be a robot.
I remember there were a few toy lines that had comics and failed. We had the Brazilians had a Brave Star comic, which had Italian and Brazilian stories, because there weren't many Brave Star comics made in the U.S.
Okay.
The Mask comic was never published here. Neither was the Centurions comic. But then again, those were 4-issue miniseries. He-Man, the He-Man comics, they were made by the Brazilian artists as well. It's when they ran out of stories from the U.S. to publish.
There weren't a lot of He-Man comics over here, were there?
Star Comics. No, I'm not sorry. DC printed a couple of He-Man comics. He-Man first appeared in a
DC Comics Presents, book. Right?
Yeah. So that's where they kind of did the comic books. I do not know if Marvel did a He-Man book with Star Comics. It is possible.
I vaguely remember one.
They did.
But they may have
only a miniseries if there was one.
Right. They never really did too many ongoing series. And
right.
the toys were packaged with their own comics, but it didn't follow continuity at all. The continuity of the toy comic book, the continuity of the TV series, and the continuity of anything outside of the TV and toy comic book was also its own continuity. So there was many different incarnations of He-Man, but they all didn't connect. And they did eventually make a comic book, like a big version of the toy comics, because every toy came with his own comic.
Oh, that's right. There was a collected edition.
So
That's
there's a
right.
collected edition of them.
I
Yes.
mentioned Pete's Basement before. He was a big He-Man fan. I remember mentioning to him in the comments section that was out because he was talking. He didn't know that there was a collected edition of the He-Man comics out recently. I was like,
Yes.
He was like, oh, cool.
I used to have 2 promo comics from the 90s version of He-Man. The one that failed. And they had different names for some of the villains because the European names were slightly different, and the names the storyline was also different from the cartoon because in the cartoon was had a lot more comedy in the 90s, the 90s version than the original, and Skeletor and Sludgehead were partners. While in the promo comic for the toys, Skeletor shows up and takes over the mutants and has them fight He-Man for him.
Skeletor, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about He-Man. Hey, you kids, stop all that downloading.
The toy line was pretty famous around here because it stayed in the toy stores for years. And they always kept bringing in new toys, which was something rare. I mean, Portugal's not a market where you can have many toy collectors and people keeping buying the toys. It's not
He-Man toys had little comic pamphlets.
Yeah,
that's what Wilson was mentioning. That got collected about a decade ago. Yeah. So you can get an omnibus of those pamphlets.
There was a line of toys called Zoids. I suppose they were not as very well known in the US, but they were very famous in the UK. And Marvel UK did a strip which appeared in the Spider-Man comic. They retitled the comic Spider-Man and Zoids. And there's early Grant Morrison work there.
And overseas, I was just going to say overseas that G.I. Joe was also, they had different names. So it wasn't called G.I. Joe. It was called Action Force.
Oh, that's right.
Because they wanted to connect it to Action Man.
I may have an Action Force comic / G.I. Joe somewhere, magazine size.
And I still remember for a year, the toys were branded G.I. Joe Action Force. And then they started using only G.I. Joe. That was about 87, 88, I think.
And then for Transformers, Marvel did the comic books. There was also a UK version. And then somewhere along the line, the UK version just started doing its own stories that did not connect with the Marvel stories.
Yeah, because if the comic was bi-weekly, because what they did, their comics were, Marvel UK had bi-weekly comics, and they would break an issue in half and do 11 pages one month and 11 pages the next. But when they turned Transformers into a weekly, they ran out of stories. So we got to a point when they caught up to the US, and let's just make our own stories and try not to mess up continuity too much. Especially because they knew the people in the US would not care at all if the UK guys were doing their own thing.
Right.
But then the UK comic started out selling the US comic, and Simon Furman stuff was pretty good. And then they had Furman over to work on the US to write the US comic. So we started unifying the continuity a bit more.
Yep.
And also, it was Furman who brought in the movie continuity, movie characters, because in the movie Hasbro was launching new toys and retiring old ones. So they killed a bunch of characters in the movie, brought in the new toys, and the new TV series focused on the new guys. Hot Rod became Rodimus Prime, and they had Ultra Magnus, Bringer. There was a female Autobot called RC. Megatron became Galvatron. Starscream was dead. And but the US comics still followed the original cartoon pretty much. They kept introducing new names from the toy line, like Scorponok and in a bunch of the combiners. They kept appearing. The headmasters as well. But it was in the UK comic that they created the story Target 2006, which is the first appearance of Rodimus Prime and Galvatron in comics. Outside the movie adaptation, that is.
Yeah.
And if you remember, when it came out, I bought G.I. Joe 300 just for the heck of it. The last issue. And it was pretty good. The Larry Hama written, I forget who drew it. I enjoyed that. It was like, it was this big sort of culmination of a battle, but you really didn't have to have read all the issues previous to enjoy it. I really liked that G.I. Joe 300. It was well done.
And when I was growing up, I had no idea that ROM and Micronauts were toys.
Oh, I have to show you something else I got this week.
That's because the comic book did so much better than the toy did. The toy flopped, but the comic book ran 75 issues under Marvel's banner.
Yeah.
Right. If you remember last week, I got a new, Matt Lesniewski comic that I was complaining the lettering was too small on.
Right.
And he also had very detailed art. And if you also remember, who was it? Frank Miller and Hard Case. Oh my goodness. Rusty and the Robot.
Jeff Darrow?
Jeff Darrow. When I bought that Jeff Darrow comic last time, the second time I read it through with a magnifying glass. Well, I just got a new lighted magnifying glass.
Nice.
just to look at comics with like that Matt Lesniewski. I have to say, I want to get one that's a little bit bigger than this, but this one worked pretty well in terms of lights. A little light switch on there. It's charged by USB. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to order a magnifying glass, a new one, just to read that Matt Lesniewski comic. So now I keep this next to my chair, and anytime I want to look at something bigger, I'm ready to go.
Oh no, small lettering. Time for the Lesniewski lens.
And this one, let's see what Jeff Darrow has drawn in the background of this comic, really small.
Hey, there's Waldo.
But the last comic I bought this week was the sillily named director's cut of the Turtles in Usagi. And it gives you this is issue 1, a black and white version of because the comic itself was in color. Oh, and this is IDW even. This isn't the new Dark Horse stuff. So I guess the Turtle one was the last thing published by IDW. So you get the black and white version of it. You get a full color shot of the tools that Stan Sakai used to create Usagi, this comic. You get.
I wonder if that's the scale, because that means his pages are smaller by the looks of it. Tools, but I'm not sure.
No, the page bleeds off the bottom.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
11 by 17.
Okay, all right.
So it's an 11 by 17 page.
Okay.
Definitely. Uses a black eraser, sumo grip, and we get Stan Sakai's step-by-step Where over here
Very
is his
cool.
handwritten plot. Then we get his layouts, his layouts, his pencils, his finishes, and you can look up in this corner. My copy is damaged, so they ordered. It's bent. Oops, this side. It's bent up here.
Okay.
So they ordered me another copy, and I'll return this one to them if they want to return. Then we get this is the initial story synopsis. You'll note that the series ran for 5 issues. The synopsis was originally for 6. So you get the handwritten synopsis by Stan. Bunch of pages of it. Bunch of pages of synopsis.
That's really cool to see the behind the scene type stuff like that.
Here's his initial breakdowns. But that's where I got it, just to look at the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
We get another couple of pages of breakdowns. So that I just find this fun to see and throw it in the Usagi collection. It was not a $6 special edition. But I find it fun to see through the. It got a little Nickelodeon back. Does Nickelodeon own the Turtles now?
Yes. They're the ones that basically bought the Turtles.
But yeah, a fun little thing to add to my Usagi collection, my rather large Usagi collection. I hate it when things come in damaged. Not because this issue will ever be valuable, but I don't want a damaged copy. That really got smashed up in that corner.
Yeah.
There we go. If you catch it at just the right angle, you can see how big
You can see how smashed it is. Yeah.
How smashed it is. But that was fun to just look through. I didn't even read all his handwriting. Maybe someday I will, but not today. I might need my magnifying glass to try and cipher out his handwriting. Want to do a rip, read, and slab before we end?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. What year should we do? We'll let Paulo choose. 92, 69, 83, 1990, or 1940?
Well, since Tim mentioned in his last video that Kit Giffen worked for Extreme Studios, let's do 92. Maybe we'll be surprised.
1992. Oh, this is a different one. Whoops, went to the wrong place. This is, let me present it. Kids Comics from 1992.
Ooh.
Got Betty and Veronica, 55. Barbie Fashion, number 20. And Little Dot, number 1. We got a number 1 issue there. Some pretty nice covers.
Yeah.
I gotta say, all those covers are good.
I probably have that Barbie Fashion.
Is that Anna Marie Cool on the cover? I mean, doing the cover, maybe? A lot of the two cover artists were generally Amanda Connor and Anna Marie Cool.
Right.
Is that Little Dot a reprint?
It looks like it's, I think it says Harvey Classics up top.
So there's no point in slabbing it and hoping it'll go up in price.
I don't think so.
I would slab Betty and Veronica because those the ones in bikinis always seem to go up in value. I would read Little Dot, and unfortunately, that means I would have to tear Barbie's Fashion.
The crack is Barbie R.I.P. Little Dot, read Little Dot, and slab the babes in bikini.
Yeah. I'm going to read Betty and Veronica because I want to know how many sexual innuendos they hit in the dialogue.
Bikinis into dolphins as well.
I'm going to rip Barbie and slab Little Dot. It's a good looking cover. It's going to look good on the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a nice little. I like the Barbie fashion cover too. What am I gonna do?
Too easy for me.
Yeah,
All those
I like the
flowers in
little.
different colors.
Yeah, I like the little dot. It just looks so nice. It's only ruined by the Richie Rich little big corner box on the bottom.
Oh yeah, the corner by the picture in the corner box. Yeah,
The
oh,
UPC
like
box,
that
yeah.
little. I wonder who that is in the cheetah costume in the corner box of Betty and Veronica.
Maybe Valerie?
I am
Josie the
going to
Pussycat? I don't know.
slab Barbie fashion. Read Betty and Veronica. I have to rip up little Dot. See you, Dot.
For the dolphin,
The dolphin is
I'm
already in Betty and Veronica.
yeah, but so she's holding that bag that's a fish. I would
Yep.
replace it with the dolphin. And
I'm
then as
going.
far as flamingos, I think flamingos would be in the background of Little Dot.
Oh yeah, they'll fit right in there. You wouldn't even
Yeah,
notice that
you
they're
wouldn't
Yeah.
even notice
not
them.
supposed
They'll
to
just
be
be
there.
hanging out there. That's
Hmm.
where I would put the flamingos.
I'm going to dolphin Archie's brush. Yeah, I'm gonna put the flamingos in Little Dot, but not in the background. Right there on the Dotland sign.
I am going to put the flamingos are going to be hanging out with Archie on the sign.
That was my first.
They're going to be
First
checking
thought.
out Betty and Veronica.
Uh-huh.
And then I am going to replace the photographer on Barbie fashion in the left side with a dolphin taking pictures.
Oh, that's a good one.
Dolphin photographer. I wonder who drew that little. I mean, I assume the Betty and Veronica is who's drawing it then? Dan Parent. But I don't know if that little dot is old or new. Because if it's old, it would be what's his name? Warren Kremer.
Warren Kramer, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, if it was old, it would probably be Warren. Or if it was new, it could have been Warren Kramer because he was still working.
You're right. He was still around in '92.
Still working
Yeah.
over at Marvel.
And it looks good enough to be him. That's a nice cover.
Betty and Veronica. Betty and Veronica looks like it's credited to Dan DeCarlo.
Dan DeCarlo. Okay, that's what I was thinking. I think Dan Parent was the one before, or who was first? Dan Parent or Dan DeCarlo?
Dan
I
DeCarlo.
think Parent.
Dan.
Was it
One
DeCarlo?
took over from the other. I can't remember. Dan
Right.
DeCarlo was the guy from the '60s, right?
Dan DeCarlo went to Archie in '59.
Okay, so Dan Parent is the guy who is currently drawing some Archie stuff, and he's been drawing Archie stuff for decades also. I always confuse the names because they're both Dan and they're both Archie artists who
have a very similar style because they did a house style.
because Dan Parent is copying Dan DeCarlo's style. Who
So the little dot cover is new, but it's redrawn from an original Warren Kramer.
Okay.
It's got slightly different proportions, and that's looking at something different. Also, the purple thing she's holding is different in the original cover.
Oh, was it an actual published cover?
Yeah. Little Dotland number 5 from 1962.
Okay.
63.
And is Barbie fashion Anna Marie cool?
Barbie fashion.
Number 20? Because that doesn't look like Amanda's style, so.
No, it doesn't. I think by that particular time period, Amanda may have left.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long.
It's credited to her.
Credited to who?
To Amanda.
Okay, maybe that is Amanda still.
Oh, okay.
But
I couldn't always tell them apart. Because they were both doing the.
Then Parent did the art inside.
Veronica's old Dottie in the corner thingy too.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. So it's not a cheetah. I mean, it is dots, but not necessarily a cheetah pattern. That's Veronica.
Okay. I didn't realize that was an Amanda cover. Okay. All 3 covers are nice. I gotta say, I picked some, some nice covers for this.
Yeah.
But that's what I always try to get, all the covers of equal sort of aesthetic value.
Is that an Amanda Connor hair? Looks like it.
Like, I couldn't always tell them apart.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'd see something that was Amanda's that was Anna Marie Cool's and vice versa, because they were doing it in sort of a Mattel style. But I remember Anna Marie Cool being a little like this. I think is graphic designy, and I remember her Amanda being a little more illustrative than graphic designy, but I guess not all the time. Slab Betty, Reed Barbie, Rip Dot. Yeah, that Betty and Veronica could probably be a cover you could convince people is worth some money.
Yeah. Just because they're in bikinis.
Just because they're in bikinis.
Yep.
That'd be a good book to collect. A book about all of Archie comics' bikini covers.
Archie Comics Bikini Covers, the book. There are people out there who spend their time drawing inappropriate Archie stuff. That's for sure. I ran into it one night. I'll have to go. I think I saved some of my favorites, but there are people who take Archie covers and make them naked. It's just kind of like, okay, fun.
Yeah.
That could be one of them. That they do that way.
You want to see something different?
Sure. Let's see something different.
The digital edition of the car magazine I write for.
Oh, okay. Let's see it. Blue Auto.
Yeah, this is the cover.
Where's your credit?
Over here to the left.
Ah. Peugeot.
These are news. Okay, Citroen EC3. I wrote this one.
Oh, okay. Did you test drive that one?
No, the car's not available for test driving yet. They just announced they're going to release it. It's going to cost $25,000.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can buy 2 of them.
Yeah, it has the LFP batteries, which can't hold a charge as big as the lithium-ion batteries. So we need to recharge it more often. But they're cheaper, so. More news.
Why does it got all that funny writing in it? The letters are all in the wrong order.
Opel Corsa Electric. I did not write this one. More news. Kia Revolution. This is not mine.
They left the font in
Comic Crack says, I'm working in my buddy's production company, and we had Porsche come through with their new electric car. Ooh.
Yeah. These are the new Kias. They're going to be available in the US.
Okay.
They look like they transform. Do they transform?
Oh, yeah, they should, right?
Are they robots in disguise? I like that light violet.
Chinese car, BYD Dolphin, just released in the Portuguese market.
Is there a dolphin driving it? There should be.
Should be a dolphin logo on there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. This is my text. I went to the presentation lunch.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
And there's a print version of this?
Yeah. Yes, but it's only for subscribers now because there's no point in distributing it. A new Lexus minivan.
Uh-huh.
This one's a hybrid. Kia EV9. This one I didn't do. My friend did.
Uh-huh.
BMW iX2. I wrote this. Still not available for test drive. It still hasn't been presented to the media. It's just they just released the press release of the pictures. This a friend of mine was invited to test drive
that car.
Yeah, a friend of mine was invited to test drive this car.
Mine the Comics is not impressed with the look of the cars.
Well, that's the problem. All of these cars look the same nowadays.
Are they driven by robots?
No, they're driven by people.
Well, it amazed me. I've got a 2009 Honda Civic. And I think they got rid of the whatever, the body model of mine a couple years later, but it had been around for a while. But it's like that body model was too radical for people.
No, it wasn't.
And it's just like, what? I mean, it looks pretty good. I got no problem, but it veered too far off the standard what a car should look like to Americans for people. And it's like I'm like, wow, it's not nearly that outrageous.
Right.
Oh, this one's mine. I did this. It was supposed to be 6 pages. Came out with 7 pages. The new car's coming from Japan. The Japan Mobility Show is supposed to be about mobility, but the thing everybody wanted to learn about was the sports cars, because Honda's bringing back the Prelude.
Soon some will be driven by internal combustion robots.
Yeah. Mazda bringing back the rotary engine as a generator for the electric engine. This one's the new Nissan Godzilla. Toyota are bringing back the MR2. Mitsubishi has this cute off-roader. And then we have the bunch of off-roaders here in lifestyle vehicles from Toyota and Nissan, and a few other stuff. Also, I went to MG in Portugal. MG came back to Portugal. They used to be British, now they're Chinese. But they also did the lunch. So I'm going to be driving the EHS in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, cool. And when you drive these cars, where do you drive them?
I go to the company's headquarters, pick them up, and bring them home.
Okay, so you drive them on your local streets or whatever.
Yeah,
You don't drive them in some prescribed area at the play. Okay.
No. Test track. Okay.
This is the new Clio. I didn't drive this one. Yeah, technology. I usually, when I don't write the technology, it's simultaneously more the texts are more expensive, but they're a bit more boring to read. New electric commercial vehicles. They're sold. They're a line of 3 models, which are sold, and they're identical for 4 different brands. It's just like old time GM General Motors badge engineering. And I drove this one, Chinese SUV BYD Tang.
Did you write this article on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
LFP batteries. I mean, it has a very large battery and can only do 250 miles of electric autonomy. Ridiculous.
Huh.
And the rest is news. And this is the price guide for
how much you will pay for each of these cars.
Yeah, they're for brand new price guide for brand new cars.
Wow. The wizard price guide of cars.
Yeah, it's set up into sections. I don't update the prices because this is boring. It takes up too much time. But I set it up so starts with hybrids, plug-in hybrids, electric cars, and fuel cell cars, which is only one, the Toyota Mirai here. We had to take out the mild hybrids because there were too many now. But at first the boss wanted to put in the mild hybrids because Suzuki launched put mild hybrid engines in all of their cars, and they put a lot of they were the only advertiser we had at the time. So we started doing the mild hybrids on the price guide.
That was interesting. Thanks, Paolo, says Titko. Paolo, how polluting is the production of these?
It is. Right now the least polluting engine on the market when it comes from well to wheel. That is when you take out the fuel source and then all of the development and production until it gets to driving. The least polluting engine is a gasoline engine from Mazda with no turbo, just a mild hybrid battery. But which is the cheaper alternative to everything else, regular hybrids, everything else.
Interesting.
It's not that engine is not available in the US. It's available everywhere on the planet except the US.
I remember when I was buying my car in 2009, looking for it. And so I was just researching all sorts of cars. And the one car that pissed me off was I think it was a Ford Escort still. Where every
in 2009.
What was that?
In 2009, the Escort had been out of the market.
What was the one that replaced the Escort then?
The Focus.
Maybe it was the Ford Focus. Whatever it was like, oh, there's a good version of this car in Europe. The Americans get this version that's not nearly as good. And I'm like,
that's correct.
Why would they do that?
Well, it would make a subcompact sell for the European Focus at brand new cost as much in Europe as a brand new Taurus costs in the US, and that price would carry over.
Oh, okay. They didn't want to outcompete themselves. They didn't want to compete with themselves.
Yeah, that's the thing. Why would you buy a Focus for the price of a Taurus?
Why would you buy the lesser version of the Focus? I certainly didn't.
Because it's cheaper.
Every source was like, no, you don't want this car. Yeah. There's a better version of it in Europe you might want, but not this one.
And the Escort you had in America was not the Escort. It was a rebadged Mazda.
Ah, okay.
Like the Ford, and so was the Ford Festiva. Remember the Festiva?
I do.
But at the same time, you could the Ford Explorer was sold as a Mazda in the Japanese market.
Well, we should wrap it up for the evening of car talk.
Exactly. We'll have more car talk next week.
We got a little look into Paolo's car riding life here at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I complain that the robots racing cars are contrived.
Petrolhead. There we go. Good comment.
Petrolhead is what they call guys who love cars.
Yep. And that's what they call that one race. I think that the genre of racers were all called petrolheads. Then they each had individual names. Mm-hmm. All right. So you guys have a good week out there.
Take care, everybody.
And we will catch you all next time.
Drive safely.